So apparently a news story came up and guys are talking about it, about how Japan's got a surplus of 30-year-old guy virgin type stuff, and you know, talking about it, and people poke fun at me because they're like, you're such a computer nerd. There's no way the hardware hound could, you know, ever actually be married, so on and so forth. Look it, guys. I may look like a complete and hopeless nerd, and there is no chance in the world for me. But just remember, every dog has his day. I've concluded that there are three types of cases in the world. There are cases that have really terrible cable management ability. There are cases that have really great cable management ability. And then there's cases that force you to do your cable management perfectly. Well, we are going to look at a case that is kind of in that third category. And we are going to be looking at the inwin 301. Inwin's one of those brands that if somebody says, hey, you want to review it? You say, heck yeah, I do, if there's any way to make it happen. And of course, I had a way to make it happen, so I had to say yes. Before I get there, I do want to say a huge thanks to Epic Gear for sponsoring me. As always, I'm a big fan of their products. Really love their mechanical switches. They feel amazing, especially like competitive gaming. So yeah, check them out. I'll have my reviews in the link in the description below. So, talking about inwin. When we look at this case, we're not talking about just an average case that you throw parts in and then call it good. This is what I would like to call an art build. The inwin 301 is designed to look great and make your build look great. So we're not going to be looking at this case under the normal metric. We're not going to be necessarily looking for the easiest of builds and ample space and making everything just really smooth and effortless. Although we're going to still want to make sure there's no major hitches, but we want to make sure that this case is doing an ample job of making our build look great. So let's go ahead, let's see how a build does in the 301, and let's see if inwin is living up to the reputation. Okay, so after my last case review, I really want to do some adjustments to my time frame. So I'm going to do a little more highlighting and less showing step by step, and see if we can get through this a little bit faster. But I still want to point out just some important features on this. So yeah, really sharp looking case. This thing feels like a brick. Like there's hardly any play in this case. Very solidly constructed. Only USB 3.0 in the front, which I'm always happy about. I do not mind seeing cases get rid of the 2.0 ports. Of course, one of the really awesome factors of this case is just a very simple press of a button, pull off your side panel. I love that. And then when you pull off that side panel, you'll notice that some of the main mounts for your motherboard are actually they're part of the motherboard tray. They're not screwed in. So that's just really nice quality feature there, including just a little indented spot that will slide into the hole to hold your motherboard right in place on these two stands. So you won't have trouble getting your motherboard right where you want it. Of course, we have one dust filter on the bottom. More about that later. And then finally, so even though the back panel doesn't have just a simple latch, which might have been kind of nice, it only has the 2 thumb screws, and then the thing just, once again, just slides right in and out very easily to push in and out like that. So I really like the designs on those panels. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start putting some stuff together, and then we will look at some more details from there. So general component wise, not too bad at all. Pretty easy install. Power supply slides right up into this PSU cover, and I screwed it in the back and the holes line up perfectly. Just super easy. Of course, with the little bit of that, I don't know, cutout mount or whatever, the board slides right into place. Super easy to mount all the holes. We've got the flush. If I pull this thing over a little bit, let's just do that. So yeah, we've got the flush I/O panel type design here, And so we've got this little bit of a slot to put the graphics card in, but I didn't have any issues getting that slid into place. Seems like there's a good amount of space there to do that. So yeah, install wise, really good. Of course, to make the aesthetic even better, once again, we're talking about an art case. We're able to put that little cover back on, hide all those screws and stuff. So, of course, we'll have that all taken care of. I might have to take this card back out through some of these steps. We'll see, not sure yet. So yeah, of course, I really like the top mount because if you want to get some really good airflow to an air-cooled GPU, you're going to be able to do it directly, and that's kind of fantastic. So far, so good. I mean, about the only thing that maybe I could quibble about a little bit is this PSU cable, or a CPU power cable, has to come from over here and go all the way, run across. But as you can see, it's really easy to just tuck it straight up there and not even really see it. So I guess I can't complain about it after all. Let's go ahead and keep going and see how this case turns out. Oh, right. This guy's got to go. I mean, I'm a big fan of AMD stock coolers, don't get me wrong, but we need to do something better. All right, so inwin has interesting design for installing a radiator, which I actually pretty well like. So you're gonna have to pull off this metal bracket here so that you can screw your radiator in place. And then this whole unit is going to slide back in. Now, let me get over here so I can actually do this. Make sure my fan cables go through where I want them to go. Now, one of the things that I had made a mistake on when I was going through this process earlier was, as it turns out, you only need to take out 2 screws to get everything in place. And it's the 2 outer screws. So when you get done, you'll slide your radiator in, and then all you'll have is these little tiny screws right here that mount to this outside, and everything else goes in the slot. I'm gonna have to do some pulling and get that radiator in, but yeah, I just wanted to show that off a little bit because that looks pretty nice, and it also has some other ramifications. We'll have to get into that a little bit more too. Okay, one thing for sure is this this case gets you into the weeds of cable management. So I put that rad in and got that all figured out, but then I realized I'm gonna have to pop out some sections here, and I just wanted to double check. So these things are meant to bend and snap off to give you some extra slots to run your cables. But as you can see, once you do that, it's permanent. So you kind of want to plan that out, and it's not a bad idea to start running your power and stuff ahead of time. And it looks like when you have this thing installed, you can pretty easily push off the back end and snap them out. But if not, you can take this whole panel out like I did and snap out the pieces you want. So keep that in mind as you're going about this case. There's just 4 screws that are really easy to take out, actually 3, and you can, no, there is 4, there's a 4th one right there. So yeah, not too bad, but just keep that in mind as you're going about with this case. Okay, I know I want to keep these things short, but I really want to point out some details, and I don't want to miss those. I really got to tell you guys right now, this is not a case for the faint of heart. This is actually going to be a pretty hard build. In comparison to pretty much any other case I've ever done, this is going to be hard. And in the end, I'm going to explain to you why that's actually not a bad thing, which I think you're going to pick up what I'm getting at here pretty quickly. So for instance, okay, these fan cables on my liquid cooling system here. Okay, you can't route them through the front. You better make sure you route them into your cable management here because this bracket will hit them. And you know, that just took some trial and error. So hopefully that's a step that I save you guys some by watching this review. But look at where everything's having to be routed. This takes some serious time and consideration on how to get your cables in and how to make them work. And so you notice I've had to pull out the graphics card. I took this bracket out and then realized this is too much in the way. I need to put it back in. I've already got my SATA cable going. So everything about this is taking some serious planning, and yet starting to look really nice already. So this is the whole point of saying this is, yes, this is not an easy build. This is going to take some effort and some thinking, and you might have to pull some things out, put some things back in. But do I think it's going to be worth it? I have a sneaking suspicion. Okay, remember what I was saying, not for the faint of heart. But even then, still very, very effective. So I've got all my cable management back here. And for starters, this cutout was great. Plenty of room to install my CPU cooler after the fact, which I always love. And there's actually lots of space to slot cables up in the front here. There is actually lots of space to cubby up here. So as you can see, I've just kind of taken all that extra slack from my main PSU cables and bundled them up into here. And so, yeah, makes it very easy to keep everything cable managed. This little bit of a slot here is actually not too crowded because I'm able to tuck some things back. I was also really impressed. These things here, I kind of had a little bit of a twist, and I did not want to go through the whole process of unplugging stuff again. And as it turns out, there's just a nice little clip, and it's pretty easy to get this piece out just like that. So I was able to just take this clip out, untwist, clip back in. So yeah, really like that design about this case. I think we're pretty darn good. Let's take a look at the front side. So like I said, this case is not easy, but the results are way worth it. This case does such an excellent job of hiding and covering all your cables so that your build looks about as clean as you can possibly get. And as you can see, things like my power supply cable and my 24-pin connector and stuff, I don't have the greatest, custom sleeved cables to do this kind of thing, and yet it still does such a good job of hiding everything. Everything looks really clean and super professional. You see, we are at the art level of case. Everything about this build and this design, it's not what I would call too complicated. It's gonna force you to take the time to be neat and make your system look professional. But in spite of doing that, inwin has done such a great job on designing that everything fits very well. I didn't have issues. This thing supports a 240mm radiator like it should. This thing supports some decently long graphics cards, although obviously if you have a rad in the front like I do, you're gonna cut some of that space off pretty quickly. What's really cool too, and one of the biggest things I love about this, is the airflow design is meant to come from the bottom and either out the back or out the back of side panel here by blowing through the radiator this way, which means that if I have some Gamer Storm fans with some little bit of red flares on it, you can see that. And so I'll just angle that back just a hair. Also, this case is super hard to move because those feet grip so well, so I always have to lift up on it. So these are going to blow out the radiator and go out the side to keep a nice directional airflow going through the case. We need to put the blast panel back on this thing, fire it up, and see what it looks like. It's so tiny! I'm so used to having full tower monstrosities on my desk that I'm not really sure what to make of this. So I'll have to do some adjustments here on that lighting on the graphics card, but I thought this was going to be a blue LED in the front, and it's actually white, which is fantastic because, well, let's face it, I got a lot of red in this build. So yeah, there's the glass panel. Everything's lit up, looks pretty fantastic. You can see the faint glow of my deep cool a little bit, but the reflection on the glass is pretty hard to see through. So yeah, if I just pull this guy back off real quick, you can just see the nice build all lit up. I need to go ahead and statically set that Oris logo to red so that it'll match my deep cool Captain CPU cooler there. I think it's gonna look pretty darn nice at that point. So I think we're good. Let's go ahead and wrap this review up. So there we have it. I mean, we've got the build in, and what can we say? Exactly what we wanted to see happen. The build looks excellent. Yes, there was some spots in that build process that were a little complicated, but that's not because the case is designed poorly. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Inwin has done such an amazing job with their case design that they are putting you in a position of making sure your build looks great. I mean, when I can throw a budget Rosewill power supply in there and not even have full custom cabling, and my build still looks extremely clean like that, you know that's the case and not the power supply. And so we've got a situation where, hey, This build may not be the easiest that you're going to do, but it is going to make your system look right if you are willing to put the time and patience to do it. Once again, this is not for the faint of heart. If you're like building your first computer and kind of worried that you're going to get all the processes in place, then maybe you should go with the case that has a little bit more room, a little easier cable management space, so that you can kind of get a feel for things. And then maybe down the road, look at something that I would call an art style type case, like what the 301 is here. But if you are ready to just go that extra level where instead of just doing hey, I can build a computer and get good performance, where you want your computer to reflect your personal taste in an artistic style, Inwin's got you covered, and they did a great job with this 301. So yeah, really love the aesthetic. Obviously though, the things that did matter, like being able to manage the cables, like the side panel having just an easy one-click pull-off button, are fantastic features. And so even though the cable management might take a little more effort, the simple fact is Inwin has given you all the tools that you need to make it as easy as it can possibly be when you're being that meticulous. So I'm really happy. And even then, just looking at that front panel and the light up of the audio ports and the USB looks fantastic. This is a micro ATX case, and while I would expect the Inwin brand, because you know, if you've heard of like the H-Tower and their D frames and stuff, and you've seen those price tags, you might expect this thing to be through the roof. But $70 is not a bad price at all. I mean, you get what you pay for, and what you get is a huge amount of quality and design. And yeah, they're not going to include fans, and they're not going to include a lot of little mini features that you would get from cases that are just trying to give you the most value, but they also don't expect you to have a cheap fan in there. They expect you to put the stuff that you want into this case. So it's with that that I'm going to easily say, Pure Overclock Editor's Choice Award. I believe this case has done a fantastic job. Guys, let me know what you think of this review. Let me know if you like my approach and how I did the build. If there's something that you wish to see or something, let me know in the comments. I will either try to respond or try to work that in my future reviews. And I will catch you later.